welcome to the live broadcast of the official departure of His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the President of Nigeria, who has been on island for about 7 nights, and he is leaving very soon. We are here at the George F. L. Charles Airport. It's a sunny Friday morning, and with me, Calix George Jr. and Creole expert Michael Gasper. We will bring you the first leg of the departure of the President's delegation, and it's going to be a very brief one here, and then we will take you down to the UNORA International Airport in Viewfort for more fanfare as we bid farewell to the Prime Minister and bring the curtain, I beg your pardon, on the President, and bring the curtain down on this very meaningful state visit. Michael?
Merci Claudia, bienvenue encore pour station télévision NTN avec nous à l'aéroport George Charles, côté nous, enfin nous ici pour présenter le public là, côté président Bola Tinubu qui visite le pays pour 7 soirs comme Claudia de nous, il est arrivé Saint-Lucie samedi passé. Il a passé un bon temps à Saint-Lucie, mais aujourd'hui il a dévié un pays, mais il a commencé en aéroport George Charles. Après ça, il est allé pour l'aéroport UNORA en Vieux-Fort avec la plus grosse cérémonie. Pour le moment, il n'y a pas une grosse cérémonie ici, il a passé en bâché avec nous plus de détails à ce qui s'est passé.
Calix, it was definitely a two-nation visit that the President had embarked on, St. Lucia first, and then he's heading to Rio de Janeiro.
That is correct. He is heading to Brazil to be part of the BRICS summit. And for those of you who are familiar with geopolitics, BRICS has been one of the oldest South-South groupings for cooperation. Originally, BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, became South Africa as well. And now, in fact, it has expanded beyond those 5 countries. And in fact, it involves Nigeria as a major player in Africa, in West Africa. And we certainly are very honored that we were able to be part of that trip across the Atlantic that President Tinubu has been able to make. As I mentioned, he could have been in a number of other countries in the Caribbean, within the Caribbean community. He certainly chose to come to St. Lucia and to strengthen relations with the Eastern Caribbean, and we're very pleased for that. And from all indications, it has been a very successful state visit, beyond the pleasantries, beyond the formalities, which we of course have been witnessing. We have also seeing some cooperation agreements also being signed on to, one with respect to technical cooperation, as had been mentioned in the parliamentary joint sitting by President Tinubu, and also even more recently, another signing regarding a cooperation agreement on culture and tourism signed between the Deputy Prime Minister as well as the Tourism Minister for Nigeria, Hannata Musa Musawa.
And I must say that the MOU indicates the follow-up is immediate. There is no lapse, there's no going quiet. The 2 countries are hitting the ground running, and I noticed there is mention of culture and the creative industries and carnival and jazz and arts. And
Fashion Week,
yes,
I think, is also coming up. Fashion Week in Lagos
the
is
Lagos
coming up
Fashion Week, yes.
And it's one of the largest, not just in Africa, but in the world. And we know the wealth of fashion that Africa has, the different materials, the way they've been able to transform these things. Even the madras that we have, although it's from India, was a sort of a play on African prints, in fact. So a lot of potential there. The Tourism and Culture Minister from Nigeria really was an embodiment of that fashion. If we actually saw her, even in the interview, and
yes,
you know, regal, elegant, and it's so much potential for us to learn. We just had Export the Runway, being put on by Export St. Lucia, and so a lot of opportunities there to grow our very own fashion industry as one of those aspects of culture.
And Michael, there is carnival in Calabar in Nigeria, and it follows almost a similar model as ours. There's pageantry, there's music, There are some elements of essay writing and sports even, but then the whole aim and objective of Italics is similar to ours in the sense that they would like to promote tourism and boost the economy. So that collaboration will be very effective. I was watching some of Nigerian media and how they were reporting on the state visit, and I want to say good morning to you, Nigerian media from St. Lucia. Good morning and hello, whatever time of the day. We are happy to have you on board here as we bring you the official departure of your president, and we thank him so much for his generosity as he referred to us as valued brothers and sisters of the diaspora.
That's right. Avec, oui, moi bien content qui ma savais si au cas comprendre créole à l'air, mais moi savais ni plaisir d'y faire un langage avec nous bien content Sainte-Lucie qui président Tinubu tenir un bon temps, il passe un bon temps Sainte-Lucie avec qu'on nous dit visite là, tu fait un chai succès. Madame m'a oublié non mais ministre touriste là. Il a commencé, enfin, Sainte-Lucie a signé, ça nous a créé en anglais un MOU, qui avait dit un document pour la comprendre, pour venir ensemble avec pour d'accord et pour commencer à travailler à plusieurs différents bagages. Carnaval, Sainte-Lucie pour entrer en Nigeria et puis Afrique, c'est habillement, là, différents bagages, Afrique ni un chai habillement bagaille et aussi là ni un chai tambour qui Sainte-Lucie a servi en pile Nigeria puis nous était aussi ouais durant temps était ici là tenir en fait c'est affaire Louis c'est maman collègue c'est affaire Louis c'est fait en fait c'est tambour enfin généralement nous ça dit président Tinubu et puis délégation passé un bon temps à Sainte-Lucie, il a fait gros succès et Sainte-Lucie qui a accompli en pile.
And we can boast that we are bilingual. We have 2 languages here in St. Lucia. Yes. Nigeria can boast that they have 200 languages. So, you know, and there are some parts of West Africa where you do actually have Creole, so our form of Creole, like Senegal, for example. So, definitely, this visit represents really a start, a foray, a first step into our reconnection with West Africa. Clearly, the connections that were made in the colonial days were rather bitter. We are very sad. But now we can actually have, on our own terms, as independent, free people, have a more positive and you know, unified approach. And so I think it's a really wonderful, remarkable visit from that perspective. We're seeing, of course, right now over in Trinidad and Tobago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India,
another powerhouse,
in the world, is visiting our region, and he is in fact coming because largely Trinidad has an 45% of the population there is of East Indian descent, and right here in the Caribbean, in St. Lucia, what, maybe 80-85% of our population is of African descent. So it is very fitting that we are in fact seeing these 2 state visits happening in the Caribbean at the same time, and we in fact have been able to welcome the president of the most populous country in Africa, soon to be the 3rd most populous country in the world, that of Nigeria.
I think it all makes sense because of course, we've had the proponents over the years of Afro-Caribbean or Indo-Caribbean relations, and I know they are very happy right now. They're very delighted to act. Some of them have passed, unfortunately, but for those who were here, I can think of an Earl Bousquet, I can think of Sir Hilary Beckers and the reparation movement, the Rastafarian community, as Michael had referred to. Those persons in our community have always been advocating for us to look towards
Africa,
look towards our own, and our history actually points us in that direction. And
it's interesting that you're saying so, because you know we only have the few little vestiges in ordinary everyday society. You know, I was still a love of music, the drumming, some of the words that we use in our Creole, you know, we still have some of it.
Dance, body language.
Some of the aspects in carnival, you know, the pie banan, the masquerade.
The pounding of the food.
The style of the food that we actually eat.
And some of the foods were imported and still survive areas such as yams.
Exactly.
And
Yes,
the farine, the cassava,
yes,
they use a lot
yes.
of that.
A lot of, a lot
So-
of influences.
In fact, and I'm glad that you also mentioned, Claudia, the idea of these who went up before us
Yes.
in the past. I think quite often we hear about Marcus Garvey, of course, the giant of
Oh, yes.
Pan-Africanism,
Yes.
and who in fact went all around the African diaspora, whether it was in New York, whether it was in St. Lucia. He visited in St. Lucia as well in the 1930s, and really raising that level of awareness that we are in fact not some sort of forgotten people, but we in fact are part of a broader diaspora, a nation. We have our own continent as well, whom in fact we can see as a motherland. And I think, he would have certainly been overjoyed at the realization of these kinds of visits that we are seeing right now. And I think too also of another St. Lucian by the name of John Quinlan, who, when there was this whole move by European powers to in fact colonize Africa at the end of the 19th century, there were a number of Pan-Africanists in the Caribbean and in North America who came together in London to have a conference almost as a corollary to the Berlin conference, which the Europeans were having, for Africans to have their own conference in the metropole, pointing out that Africa should not be carved up and divided and pillaged as what was going on right there. And there was in fact a St. Lucian from Soufrière by the name of John Quinlan, who was part of that conference as far back as 1900,
Wow.
advocating for a Pan-African approach. So we do have a very old history in terms of our own people thinking back and looking to the continent and wanting to see that level of reconnection. And so, again, we've heard of the many examples, of course, Darnley Alexander, that has been spoken about. Also that of our Nobel Prize winner. Well, in fact, in the first instance, our Nobel Prize winner for economics, Arthur Lewis, did not necessarily go to Nigeria as his main area of study, but went to the Gold Coast, and just after independence, it became Ghana, and he was a major advisor of Kwame Nkrumah. He, in fact, was able to prepare the first national development plan for Ghana, because Ghana was the first of the African countries to come out of colonialism by gaining its independence, I think back in 1957. So it is very fitting that our other Nobel Prize winner, Sir Derek Walcott, who was the second black person to be able to win the Nobel Prize for literature in 1992, right? He was only preceded by Wole Soyinka of Nigeria, who won it in 1986. And these two gentlemen, I think, for me, epitomize this unity between the two countries. They were very good friends. They understood the need for our culture to shine and to be expressed and to be brought to the world, because it is a very rich culture. And they certainly enjoyed that. And Wole is still alive. Unfortunately, we've lost Sir Derek here in St. Lucia. But I think, again, if he were around, he would certainly be so very pleased, I think, that this type of visit would actually be happening and seeing this unification of Africa and the Caribbean.
It's definitely inspiring. I mean, the legacy lives on, and the country is very enthused to have had this visit.
And I think we are going to be expecting... Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when we get back.
Okay.
Liquid sunshine.
We can get out of the rain.
Yes, I wanted to invite. Yeah, the Kelly ceremony. Didn't I mention it the last time?
I think we should
Yeah, just quoted it.
Start over?
Start over.
Oh. Okay. An African person said Popo.
David Bobo.
The name Popo. Okay.
So we were greeted by some liquid sunshine here at the George F. L. Charles Airport, And what we've done is we have relocated to a more sheltered position, and so we will be able to bring you more or less a fluid and uninterrupted broadcast, colleagues. And I was just reflecting on what could be singled out as my high point for the entire state visit. And I believe that for me, I was very happy to see us physically alongside the Nigerians, and they blended so smoothly with us. That's one for me. And I could say, yes, those persons, you know, they really feel like, you know, they're part of our community already. And hello to as we await the arrival of the president and his entourage, I must say greetings to the Nigerian community of St. Lucia. I know this entire 7-day visit has been very, very meaningful to you, and you are very excited to see what is to come. We interviewed the member of the Nigerian community here, and Mr. Anthony Inze, and he was very, very intrigued. Actually, okay, the airport is alive.
It's a working airport.
It's
a very active airport.
It's an active alive, and we actually have a Caribbean Airlines flight, which is almost coinciding with the departure of the President Tinubu and his entourage. So the airport is not closed, hence from time to time we will be a bit drowned out. So what we will do is to pause and we will resume commentary. So I am sure you can understand this, and we thank you for your understanding in that regard. Michael, what was your high point at, throughout the state visit?
Premièrement, moi j'ai senti visite ça la fait moi senti il ben moi j'ai croyance qu'on nègre noir en guinéen et moi servi mot guinéen puisque au savent ma savent ce qu'on est guinéen c'est mon qui sorti Afrique en cette ici en Caraïbes là c'est pays noir avec pour yo tchebe yon assez tradition nous te crier qu'elle est avec un malgré il pas tellement fort à présent mais c'est qu'elle est c'était yon assez tradition qui était vivant en Babono avec un l'autre pays mais plutôt les mots de l'autre pays l'autre place en Saint-Lucie mais plutôt en Babono en bas mon qu'on Noé Dillet avec monsieur Siméon Joseph en chaque saison moi me l'élever car ouais tradition et peut-être moi ça dit vite massailler c'est côté il était qu'à couper cou en mouton avec à danser en les sang mouton mais tout ça en chaque monde qui a c'est particulièrement Jean-Willy Jazz qui a c'est un mauvais bail mais c'est Jean Dunier c'est qui a servi comme en manière pour un rituel you can dire anglais pour un monde qui prie ça c'est bon Dieu pour dire merci bon Dieu puisque en tradition qu'elle est yo ka mener tout manger tout différent qualité ba yo ni la clé si c'est chauffeur ou ka faire si ou ka cuire ou ka mettre peine là ou ka servir tout ça outils ou ka servir ou ka mettre ça c'est comment dire en tradition nous tient dans Saint-Lucie avec yo ka ni langage africain moi changer yon c'est ba chobia man karaki chobia là ni yon de ba moi changer mais de moi ça y est moi pas ça mais ça ka mucho yo te ka service ba ça généralement pour répondre question c'est moi je suis content ça puisque pour moi ça visite ça la mucho nous c'est pas seulement pour nous dépendre en l'air façade c'est ça nous te connaître depuis après esclavage nous te connaître l'Angleterre, c'est l'Amérique, Canada. Mais à présent, pour chaîne relation et puis nègres qu'on nous-mêmes, Afrique qu'on nous-mêmes, nous avons là une chaque possibilité avec eux-mêmes qui viennent ici, Saint-Lucie, ils sont contents, puisqu'ils ont ouais ça. C'est même une petite expérience, maintenant, vite. Je vais faire Pisco en temps. Je vais aider ces Pisco qui sont sortis de l'Amérique. Venir travailler Saint-Lucie, je vais aider eux, et puis créole, et puis manière pour vivre. Et là, il y a un lycée qui nous en temps ça là. Et si moi dis, les lycées venus, c'était la première fois qu'ils étaient venus dans un pays qui a autant de gens noirs. Et que ça distrait ses veilles. Il était pour aller, il ne pas jamais été, jamais quoi. Il était venus dans un pays côté la thème plus noir, passé blanc. Avec ça distrait, ça distrait. So, ça a mucho qui il est arrivé pour gens noirs. Si porter yon a l'autre pour en Saint-Lucie même, visite ça la Camouche, possibilité, ça nous ça fait. Même quand tu les calypso, même si on qui aime calypso, quand ouais, calypso c'est calypso noir, c'est Jean Soka, aller Afrique, et fait big gros bagay tout bonnement. Alors moi bien content que nous joignent qualité visite ça là, c'est maman à l'école là qui joine. Il y a un maman à l'école ça qui demande moi est-ce qu'on a commencé le scholarship l'année là? Ça a mucho force moun envie ça avec nous bien contents qui ça a fait.
Yeah, I can well imagine students looking forward to going to Nigeria to pursue and advance their education, colleagues, and we were looking at and reflecting on the high points. I know the president was conferred with a very high honor.
Yes, but even before that, though, I mean, there's so much in terms of high points. It's so hard to
there
be able
is
to
single out
characterize
anyone.
And you know, for me, one of the things that kind of struck, I like to look at things in historical context too. And you know, there's this story about Mansa Musa, and Mansa Musa was a great king of Mali. And he was also, I mean, this is a very long time ago, of course, in the 1500s. And he was famed to be one of the richest men in the world at his time, because the wealth of Mali and all its gold and whatnot. And he was Muslim, and he went, like a good Muslim, he went to Mecca on pilgrimage. But of course, in those days, he would have had to have traveled a very long distance in a caravan, to get to Mecca, to get to Arabia. And the idea along the way that, people said that, they were so overwhelmed at his wealth and his riches when he got to Egypt, when he got to different parts, because they had no idea that Africa was so wealthy. And I feel for us here in the Caribbean, we have almost been taught through propaganda, through misinformation, to believe that Africa is this dark continent, this poor place, this area void of culture, that people are still starving and walking around in loincloths and and the only thing to go and see maybe are go on a great safari, but not for the people.
Yes.
The people are almost cast aside. And I feel that this visit is a moment of recognition by us here in St. Lucia and the rest of the Caribbean that Africa is a wealthy continent, is a very proud continent. Africa has so much to offer, and it is precisely why the Chinas, the Indias, the Europes are all in Africa. They are all seeking what they can get out of Africa.
Exactly.
And,
so and
we are part of that story here. We were taken out as well in that way.
Exactly.
So I feel that this visit is really a sort of a Mansa Musa movement and movement for us here in the Caribbean. And Claudia, you were talking about even the Nigerians that were present here in St. Lucia. I never even knew we had so many Nigerians.
Yes, we have
pleasantly
about 60
surprised.
Strong.
I thought it was maybe even more than that, but because just judging by
in the
either
association.
Way, okay, in the association, yes. I see. And I think that's a good distinction, because then I also met a Nigerian who happens to be here on internship, working at one of our leading hotels here. Yes. He studied in the UK, in Spain, and he's here on internship, hospitality. And he was making a point. He's from Lagos, and he said he lives about 10 minutes away from from the president, right, in Lagos Island. But he's never seen the president. He could never have met the, you know. And here he is,
Yes.
here in St.
All the way
Lucia,
in
Yes.
being able to actually meet the
with
president,
him,
his
yes.
own president. And I think it's a really powerful moment to show how, I mean, even though we're small, there's great value in smallness sometimes. There's great value in the closeness that can exist in small island states like ours, and how we can connect people. Because I know a lot of people are asking, well, you know, why would a president of a country of over 230 million people want to come to a tiny little street equivalent in the case of
Yes,
Nigeria?
yes, yes.
And I think it's a great fillip for St. Lucia, and the fact that we have been able to host him, I think should be certainly a great honor, and being able to allow him to be the first non-St. Lucian to actually hold our highest award, I think is very, very fitting for
Congrats to
our relationship with Africa, that we can actually be able to offer this minor token of honor to a president of such a remarkable country.
Very much so. I mean, it's a sea level rise in our overall consciousness as a people, because we've been told the story of the Atlantic slave trade, but then we've never had the story of what we were or what our ancestors were before that experience. And so there has always been that gap in our identity as a people. And I believe that now persons will be truly inspired to read more and research more, not just on the entertainment side with the African movies, yes, and accept the music, but also to delve more deeply in terms of searching for their own identity. Because
peut-être nous avons fait changer nous à sur l'aéroport George Charles, côté nous avons espéré président Tinubu qui a su visiter avec Jodia et qui a quitté le pays, mais il a été par George Charles. Au cas de chaque des autres, ça veut dire l'année après l'activité à sur l'aéroport, avion entré, avion quitté, l'année après les autres, mais nous ici pour présenter ça.
So as Michael was saying, it is a very busy Friday at the airport, but basically we know that you understand that there are going to be noises as the aircrafts, the various aircraft land, etc., etc. So.
And let's hope that in the future we may be seeing some African airlines coming to
Yes.
our airports in St. Lucia. I mean, it is one of the great desires, I know.
Même quand on mentionne ça, mais regardez Claudia, Libonia, Jonas, un teacher, dit nous, il partait tellement soucié pour aller en Afrique. Mais après, nous, avec visite, ça là, qu'a fait envie d'aller en Afrique, avec il a envie déjà commencer pour faire voyager ça.
Yes, Savoy, Michael. Well, we have gotten some feedback, and this writer in particular, she wrote to Michael and she was saying that she was skeptical of Nigeria. I mean, we all know why. However, just from the state visit, she was able to realize that perhaps there is more beyond the negatives that she had been hearing. Because when a country is so populated, a few persons who are there and they tarnish the reputation of the country, not realizing that it actually just creates a whitewash of everybody, you know, undeservedly so and inaccurately so, but then it happens, and then people on the outside think that, okay, everybody in this country is like that. But Khalid, I can remember you were sharing a story where somebody misrepresented themselves to you, and they were of a different nationality. So these are things that happen across the globe when persons are dishonest.
And you have that. You will have those issues in all countries. People are right now doing identity theft from all parts of the world, including most commonly, of course, the United States of America. The reality is that, quite often we, St. Lucians, people from around the world, we will criticize culture and attitudes and issues that may exist in various parts of the world. We tend to be very knowledgeable of what happens in the United States of America, and so we know about the issues of school shootings, we know about the issues of gun violence, we know about a lot of the negatives, but at the same time, so many positives. And the reality is that St. Lucians, love going to the United States of America. They still have family there. They have strong connections. Most of our visitors come from the United States of America. So all countries have their problems, and that is the reality of it. So we'll expect that right here in St. Lucia, we have our own problems. We have our rotten apples as well, or eggs, or I don't know what you want to call them. but we have that, and we all need to, of course, aspire for better. But that should not in any way keep us back from connecting and making friends beyond our shores, and in building up positive opportunities for our very own people. And you were mentioning, of course, the issue of scholarships. I mean, we've heard from Prime Minister Pierre saying that one of his goals, and one of the goals of the country, should really be that of ensuring that we have at least one university graduate in every household. That's the ambition. We're far from getting there. We know the challenges, of course, in terms of cost, in terms of tuition. We also know that there are challenges in terms of a lack of scholarships from our traditional partners. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, we would have gotten lots of scholarships from the UK, from Canada, from the United States. That's not happening anymore. And so we have to look to new partners around the world. And just this year, we saw 45 students who are going to be off to Taiwan. We have students in Africa already, in Morocco, in North Africa, and no doubt in other parts of the world, in Cuba, in Europe. And this opportunity now to have St. Lucians going to study in African universities is very, very positive, not just in terms of the academic qualification that they will be able to hold, but also the cultural qualification that they will be able to bring forward there. Being able to learn a language, being able to meet people and connect in terms of business opportunities. And I mean, there's so much of a wealth that we can do in that regard. And I'm so glad that Mr. Jalim Udovic was able to share with me last week, just after the passing of his father, Mr. Vincent Udovic, that his father studied in Nigeria back in the 1970s.
Wow. It is a pity he did not meet him.
It is a pity that he was not here to be able to witness this type of an event, and I'm sure he would have been smiling at what was happening there, because and of course he came back to St. Lucia and taught a number of people to know how to sculpt. And so that
incidentally is Shambhavu.
And yes, of course.
I think we need to acknowledge that as the African influence is stronger in some communities, more so than others.
Yes.
And I think Michael keeps alluding to that. So
that is partly because it's where you found, after emancipation, you had the indentured Africans, the freed Africans, who came here freely, and a number of them settled in the Babonneau area. in the Foasaw area, and also in the PI area in the south as well. So there are some pockets of areas where you see in PI, for example, you know, they're very strong in terms of their culture too. They drumming, kutumba, dancing. So you're seeing these little vestiges, because whereas prior to that, a lot of those persons who were enslaved, they had been there they were creolized almost. And so they took on a part of the Creole, Antillean culture.
Made to divest of their
so the dance style was a little different and on whatnot. But then of course with this new injection of African spirit in Babono, in PIS, that certainly is very, very strong.
Moi, je voulais dire, Claudia, on l'a dit, moi, quoi qui est intéressant, c'était hier, quand il constitue avec le ministère qui est responsable des affaires étrangères, on va voir Baptiste. Il fait un bon statement, un statement en cas qui a parlé à sa significance visite cela avec à chaque information à ce manière de la passer avec qui était satisfait de manière simplicité, oui si vrai, président Tinubu avec délégation. Et nous comme on dit, plusieurs moi quoi c'est Calix qui te dit c'est arrivé tout à l'heure, c'est ça qui fait là, c'est ou qu'a senti nègre, ou qu'a commencé à sentir de pride, croyance comme venir qu'on nègre pour venir ensemble, puisque nous te dit plus bonheur, c'est l'autre pays, puisque après esclavage, colonialism and the slave trade, c'est nous presque venir comme nous haïs nègres, vous comprenez, nous haïs un à l'autre, avec ça visite ça là, qu'a mettre en chaque croyance en manière nous caïa, avec scholarship là qu'on nous dit, scholarship là qu'a renforcé ça, qu'a mettre en qualité en l'orgueil pour avec appréciation pour Afrique. Mais avant moi finir ce là, nous espérer toujours président ça c'est Tinubu, nous à sur l'aéroport George Charles, il n'y a pas n'importe moment, et puis délégation.
The outriders are approaching, so that's an indication that the presidential convoy is very near, and very soon we should be able to bring you the arrival. Oh, yes, they are already in sight, coming onto the tarmac. And the president, of course, having made his way from the Windjammer Landing Hotel. And they're right here for a brief but very warm send-off. And to do so, we have the High Commissioner to St. Lucia in the UK, His Excellency Anthony Severin. We have the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs, Janelle Modest Stephen, and Mr. Osbert Dove. So from the George F.L. Charles Airport, they will see the President and his delegation off.
Yes, and of course, I should mention Mr. Osbert Dove, former Permanent Secretary in a number of ministries in the government, in fact has relatives in Nigeria, and so it really speaks to some of the sometimes the unknown connections that still exist. That between our peoples. Quite often they get more cemented in the Londons and the New Yorks and in the metropoles, but it is very telling. In fact, during this visit, I also met two members of the Cox family here in St. Lucia, who are actually Nigerian. Their father being Nigerian, the mother being St. Lucian, met in London, and they were in fact born in Nigeria, and they spend their time between Ghana and Nigeria. So there are in fact a number of these untold, unknown connections that already exist between St. Lucians and Nigerians. My sister-in-law is married to a Nigerian. My dad's first cousin was married to a Nigerian doctor in Trinidad. And I'm sure a lot of other people have these connections that may already exist that they really don't remember.
I can tell you that the Honorable Emma Hippolyte, her sister was married to a Nigerian.
There you go. There you
I'm
go.
not sure that they're still together, but there are connections to the children.
And I believe we are
Oh,
seeing
yes.
images right now of the president heading onto that jet after saying
Yes.
farewell to
Yes. Those
High
are
Commissioner Severin.
very brief farewell
Of course, this will be a very short flight.
to
A
yes.
local transfer between George F.L. Charles Airport in the north of St. Lucia
Yes, and
down
the
to our
Iwanora.
international airport, Iwanora, in the south of the island. I do believe he'll be able to get a nice glimpse of our remarkable scenery
Yes.
on the west
Yes,
coast of the
course,
island,
of course.
including the World Heritage Site, the Peter Mandan area, those majestic twin peaks that come right off the sea in the Soufrière area. So he's been able to spend 7 days here on island and to be a guest. Of course, the last 2 days were a bit more restful for him. Of course, he's been keeping quite a busy schedule, just coming off working in Abuja, those Afrexim Bank meetings which were on in Abuja. Saw, in fact, some of our own OECS leaders in the persons of Dr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell of Grenada. They were also participants of that Afrexim Bank meeting in Abuja, and President Tinubu as well was part of that meeting. And he's now gone through a state visit here in St. Lucia and will be then heading on to a summit of leaders of the South
Yes.
in Brazil, in the former capital of Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. And certainly he'll be meeting with the other head of states visiting in the region right now, that of Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India. And it is really wonderful that the Caribbean can in some small way be a part of this moment.
Taking center stage.
As of course we can share in this opportunity, of course, to keep some of our major concerns on the agenda. I think it was very touching that we saw the Foreign Minister of Nigeria also part of the delegation, but also the Minister for the Environment, who we got the pleasure to meet back on Monday, and to be able to interview him and to hear about their own efforts at pushing forward with climate change. They certainly have similar challenges as with us here in St. Lucia. The issues of desertification, a major problem in the north of Nigeria, and as well, of course, flooding, major problem in places like Lagos. And we too have some of these very same issues in terms of climate change, the issues of energy. Nigeria, although that Africa has made some remarkable progress with respect to electrification, I think nearly 90% over 90% of Africans now have electricity. But Nigeria, not so good thus far, but they're still trying to push forward. I think about nearly 60% of the population has access to electricity. So still a big effort that to be made, and the importance of renewable energy within that context is really important. And so we also have that similar challenge afoot. The matter of energy security, I think, is also important to note, because Nigeria is an oil and gas power. They are a major producer, and of course, we've seen that the challenges of how the price of oil can fluctuate so much, and we've seen attempts in the past to be able to secure reliable sources of energy. We've seen efforts in terms of Venezuela in that regard, and Petrocaribe. Is there a potential cooperation agreement with Nigeria and the Caribbean when it comes to oil and gas, especially with Africa in the mix? We can only wonder and hope that we in fact are going to be able to see some of these considerations there. But certainly the culture as well. We also met with the culture minister, arts, culture, tourism, and the creative economy.
They are all very, very passionate, Alex, and I just want to remind our viewers that the president and his delegation will embark on a short transfer to the Iwanora International Airport. The Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre, has made his way via ground travel to the HIA, and he will be awaiting the arrival of President Tinubu and his entourage. And we will be right here to bring you coverage of this. There will be the military salute down at the HIA, farewell by officials, and we are not quite on time with the initial schedule, but he should be departing finally at around 1 o'clock, anytime between 22 to 1 o'clock. And we are here with you to bring you the lasting moments that matter of this very, very memorable visit. History in the making, we can say, colleagues.
Oui, Claudia, il y a un autre bagage nous a dit, mais comme Claudia dit, nous l'avons espéré président Tinubu qui a quitté le pays tout de suite, il a battu avion, ça c'est avion George F.L. Charles, avec il a tout de suite quitté George F.L. Charles pour aller Vieux-Fort, côté la en cérémonie, Premier ministre Philippe J. Pierre et puis l'autre délégation gouvernement qui a reçu en Vieux-Fort, ça c'est aéroport Vieux-Fort, avec une cérémonie là, peut-être un petit bagage avant, il a dit Dédé, avec pour y quitter Saint-Lucie. Mais ça m'a été intéressé aussi. C'est ça, moi j'ai envie de nous adresser ça pour Saint-Lucien pour prendre une significance visite là. Nous avons parlé en chai sur ça, mais nous, le président Tinubu, en l'honneur, ça veut dire que je ne vais pas décrire, je veux dire ce Tinubu, ce président Tinubu, puisque l'honneur à nous là, c'est un honneur qui a un gros titre Saint-Lucie. Avec ça, on est cause en pile monde en sur les médias sociaux, qui a dit en pile bagaille, est-ce beau ça, toute cette qualité bagaille comme ça, avec comme je dis, hier en caille consiste, même parlement pour la bouille, adresser ça, c'est lui qui est ministre qui a responsabilité des affaires étrangères et adresser ça. Mais je vais tout ça, ou même Denis pour dire à cette situation, est-ce que cette mission qui a bien comprendre qui valait en significance en l'honneur comme ça?
Yes, certainly. I think the government has, and most governments will always try to honor visiting heads of state in one form or another. And it has become almost customary practice that countries will extend an award or an honor to that visiting dignitary. And you will see it to a head of state or a head of government. In fact, just recently, cities will do it too. They'll offer keys to the city if they have somebody visiting, And so that type of honor is quite common in an effort to build that kind of closeness and relationship. And really the honor is a way of more so honoring the country and ensuring that there is that appreciation being shown to the head of state of that country. And I think, for example, in the case of St. Lucia, the highest honor that we currently have is that of the Knight Commander of St. Lucia. It's the same honor that has been afforded to Sir Vaughan Lewis, to the likes of Sir Winston Paris, to Sir Derek Walcott, to Dame Lawrence Laura, my father actually, Sir Calix as well. Most recently, Dr. Cato Lorenzen, remarkable St. Lucia scholar in the United States, was also honored. So the President Tinubu is in fact the first non-St. Lucian to be able to be receiving this honor. Of course, we've made the parallels that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also being honored with the highest honor that can be offered to him by Trinidad and Tobago. Prime Minister John Compton in the past was honored by the Bolivarian Republic. Many leaders, Mia Motley, I mean, you go on and on and on, and you will find that this has been done in the past to be able to recognize and to be able to bring that closeness of connection to the country. Yes, and we are seeing one of the Gulfstream Nigerian Air Force plane heading off the parking apron and heading towards the runway here at the George Frederick Lawrence Charles Airport in St. Lucia. It is
taxi down the tarmac and eventually take off.
Yes.
short transfer, probably about 10 minutes.
It
Yeah.
is going to be very, very short. I have no doubt about
Yes.
it. And it is.
But safe flight to them nonetheless.
It is a very picturesque airport here in Castries at
It
VG.
is, and historically significant.
Significant
as
airport
well.
is our first airport here in St. Lucia, originally built back in the 1930s, and later on it was extended, during which time a number of St. Lucians worked on the extension of that airport, including the first chief minister of St. Lucia, that of Sir George F.L. Charles, one of the early pioneers against the fight against colonialism and the realization of adult suffrage, universal adult suffrage here in St. Lucia. And he is remembered by the naming of this airport in his honor, originally called VG Airport, the name of the area right here in Castries where it finds itself. As I said, it's a very picturesque airport, and in fact, it's right along the VG beach. You can literally walk out of the terminal and
So
go right and
accessible.
soak and
Yes.
and soak your feet in the water. And so it certainly has a lot of charm. And this is the airport that he is in fact departing from. It's primarily for regional aircraft. It's about 6,700 feet, the length of the runway here at the George Charles Airport, and more than adequate to handle jets of the nature that the president is in fact traveling in. And of course, as Cordery mentioned, it's going to be a very short trip down to the south of the island, to the Hiwanora International Airport. That airport is named after the first name of St. Lucia, given by the original inhabitants of St. Lucia, the Kalinago people, or the Amerindian population of St. Lucia, before the advent of European colonization. And that name, Hiwanora, means land of the iguana. Of course, indicating what was a very dominant species that was existing at that time. Unfortunately,
time.
not so much
Not so much
now as a result of development.
Yes, but I think some of those species are also protected now as well.
That is correct. St. Lucia is home to the world's rarest snake in the world, found on Maria Islands, and that is the St. Lucia racer. And it's found only on that offshore island of St. Lucia, and it's also a protected species, as with the St. Lucia whiptail, a very special lizard that's only found on that island as well. And it has the colors of the national flag, interestingly enough.
I've always found it interesting that the two names given to St. Lucia by the Amerindians. You have Ayanola, avion.
And we have
Yes,
liftoff.
Premier avion, ça c'est avion en l'armée, Air Force, you got dit l'armée Nigeria, il parti là à présent, mais ça pas avion qui président Tinubu a suivi. Là, il y a un deuxième avion qui est blanc, et qui est parti tout à l'heure, avec on nous dit, c'est un voyage qui n'est pas tellement long,
Yes.
peut-être 10 minutes, mais pas ça, non pas ça tellement, mais il n'est pas
Just
tellement
about.
long, avec il est arrivé en aéroport Hiwanora tout à l'heure, côté Premier ministre Philippe J. Pierre, avec ses délégations au gouvernement, qui a reçu président Tinubu et puis délégation en Vieux-Fort.
So the aircraft which just left is carrying the president's medical team, and he is going to be accompanied by Ambassador Shigori on the other aircraft, which will be leaving soon and making their way to the Hiwanora International, where the welcoming party is already on standby, awaiting their arrival. And it's going to be a red carpet farewell. And Prime Minister Philippe J. Pierre indicated that he is going to pay his visit, an official visit, I'm sure, to Nigeria as well.
Vieux-Fort.
And now
Some
we are
images of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force Band forming up at
here at the Hiwanora
Hiwanora
International Airport.
on the parking apron. Normally utilized for smaller jets, and we can see the president's main plane, and of course we can now see the other smaller jet of the president now moving forward. In fact, I should mention that Gilbert Shiguri, of course, has been a long-standing ambassador for St. Lucia. He was first appointed as St. Lucia's ambassador to the UNESCO based in Paris back under Prime Minister John Compton back in the 1990s. And he has in fact remained as St. Lucia's ambassador to UNESCO up to this point.
And the Holy See.
And the Holy See. Yeah. And he in fact is also, I should mention, Nigerian.
Yeah.
He, of course, is where he is originally from. Of Lebanese descent, I believe, but he calls Nigeria his home, his homeland. And he has been an integral part in this visit as well, ensuring that those two countries can in fact be able to strengthen and finally realize diplomatic relations.
Speaking of diplomatic relations, Calix, one of the issues that came out of the president's meeting with the Nigerian community here was the suggestion that there be an established Nigerian presence on island that can work with them and take care of the various issues that may arise in the community. And the President Tinubu, immediately committed to looking into making this possible for them. And I believe that would be especially helpful to them. And of course, they turned out in large numbers. The Nigerian community, Michael, they came out in large numbers to meet with their president. As Calix indicated, a Nigerian in St. Lucia indicated to him that he would never have gotten the opportunity to interact with the president, maybe not even from a distance, much less to actually have a one-on-one interaction with him like this. And so the Nigerians profited the opportunity.
And I think we've also, for a number of St. Lucians, the very regular interaction with somebody from Nigeria would be perhaps through their parish church. And that point was made by the Prime Minister that his own parish priest is Nigerian, Father Festus.
Yes.
But my understanding is that there are about 7 Catholic priests on island from Nigeria.
And there are some nuns
as well as a number of nuns who are also, I think, at the St. Lucy's home, who assist with the care for senior citizens here in St. Lucia. And so there is, of course, that very interesting presence that exists at that religious level. Nigeria is a multi-religious nation. Islam is a very strong Islamic population, very strong Christian population, also animist native indigenous religions as well present in Nigeria. So certainly this idea of a diplomatic presence or consular presence in St. Lucia would definitely benefit Nigerians living here in St. Lucia, as well as strengthening that overall cooperation between our two countries and also regions.
I think that would be very useful, Michael, because the government will embark on a 5-year work plan overall, so consular presence would be very useful to bring into fruition some of the initiatives that we heard the president mention at the joint sitting as regards in education and in technology, in science, in agriculture. All of this would be facilitated.
And I think we should also point out that it's seemingly the governments are kind of following the people, because this relationship has already been happening in some very interesting ways.
Yes.
Claudia, I don't know, are you a fan of Emanuela? You remember Emanuela? The child comedian.
Absolutely.
She came to St. Lucia back in 2019 and packed audience who came out to see and Mark Angel and Nigerian comedy. She is loved by so many in St. Lucia. And even more recently, we had the visit of Cora Obidi, who was a special guest, a social influencer for Carnival. And she was in 2024, was it?
Yes.
And of course, over 8 million, I think, followers in her social media handles. And she was so enamored by St. Lucia. She felt so at home.
And St. Lucians also enamored by her too.
Yes.
Having seen her and been a fan, a follower on social media and of course that idea that she was actually in St. Lucia,
Yes.
and I think she did a lot to expose the island because she posted a lot on social media
Yes.
to give
Moi-même, Kaido,
the exposure to St. Lucia.
manière encore, je pense que si quelqu'un tellement, tellement pas peut-être en l'autre dès l'année comme ça, à la cause de visite ça là, plus nous plus teacher sorti Nigeria en c'est l'école Saint-Lucie, qui instruit ce à faire le scanner, plus teacher qui étudier. Nous aussi plus maman qui aller Nigeria qui étudier. Nous aussi le carnaval Saint-Lucie en Nigeria. Nous avons Calypso, nous avons Soca, c'est musicien Soca. Nous avons aussi plein de gens Nigeria qui viennent Saint-Lucie. La canipie chance. En plus, il y a un bagage qui a fait tout de suite, c'est voyage sorti Nigeria direct pour Saint-Lucie avec Saint-Lucie aller Nigeria. Pour woman, manière pour aller Nigeria, ou pour aller par l'Angleterre, et bien par l'Amérique. Mais il y a une possibilité là pour nous aller direct en ces places-là. Alors, visite là, c'est un chaque bénéfice, Saint-Lucie est bien content. Avec moi, on va parler de ça. En ligne de, ça nous a dit diplomatie, en ligne de gouvernement, à établi, moi, Saint-Lucie, avec peut-être ça, il est difficile pour Saint-Lucie seulement OICS, qui a établi un bureau en Nigeria pour garder les affaires Saint-Lucie en ce pays.
D'accord. I think it's very important that we do the same in that regard. Because we're going to be having students there soon.
Oui,
we're going to be having a presence there soon. There will be people who will be interested in doing business in Nigeria and likewise. So I think certainly if there is a country in Africa that we should be looking to establish a diplomatic presence in, that it certainly should be that of Nigeria. I think we're seeing the president's flight taking off.
And the president and his delegation are now airborne and heading to the HIA, or the UNR International Airport. Of course, a very scenic flight if it's near a window.
Yes, yes, certainly. And I think we just got some drone shots earlier on of the lovely location of this George Charles Airport. It's right on a peninsula, Tombolo, between beautiful Shock Bay, that beach on the north side, and the Castries Harbor on the south side. And it's very, very picturesque part of a very beautiful island. But certainly he's also going to get some lovely views heading down the west coast, the very rugged mountainous west coast of St. Lucia. In as much as the distances may not seem very far in terms of a crow's flight, but as a result of the ruggedness of the terrain, it's a mountainous country, and so it does make the internal travel a little challenging, and it would have taken about maybe about an hour and a half for the president to have gotten down from his hotel to the UNR International Airport. And right now he's going to be able to do it in perhaps less than, in about 10 minutes.
10 minutes tops. 10 minutes
Maybe tops.
10 minutes tops.
He's got to kind of circle around and then come back down. So yeah, but definitely it'll be a very short trip, and we hopefully we can probably even time it to see how long it is going to take. But
yes, for sure. Yes.
So nous ici, comme on dit, nous on dit que le président parti sous avion avec pas tellement de temps, je ne vais pas dire exactement combien, mais c'est un voyage qui coûte. Avec tout à l'heure, il est arrivé à l'aéroport Hiwanoro, ça c'est un vieux fort, et comme on dit tout à l'heure, Premier ministre honorable Philippe J. Pierre et puis en délégation, l'autre membre du gouvernement qui a espéré, nous avons tout à l'heure, ces polices-là, de gagner un autre power encore pour d'aider avec il est parti après il est parti quitter Saint-Lucie, il est allé à une grande conférence en Brésil avec et puis c'est une grande conférence économique en Brésil, qui c'est là la gagne plus discussion avec ça qui matché finissement visite les sorties Nigeria pour arriver Saint-Lucie aller Brazil et puis il y a des bureaux.
Yes, and we do have some persons who are, I guess they are traveling this morning and they are quite enthralled.
I think they're heading to Trinidad and they're waiting on
yes.
Their flight, Caribbean Airlines,
yes,
to depart. I'm not sure if they'll be getting, they may be met at the airport by another similar scene.
Similar scene
given that Narendra Modi is supposed to be traveling out as well.
Very interesting.
Today, I'm not sure the timing
They might
of that.
be leaving one state visit to
to join another.
Yes. But they were quite enthralled. They were looking on closely and they seemed quite interested in the proceedings, although brief, at the airport.
And it's certainly not often that we get this opportunity to host a head of state, a sitting head of state.
The pleasure is ours.
Again, we've spoken about that, the Queen back, I think, in 1966. I think she came again in 1986, I believe, was it? Or was it Prince Charles? Maybe it was Prince Charles at that point.
I think it was Prince Charles.
But there was another visit. We saw the Pope John Paul II visiting in 1987? 86, 87? Okay, 86. I was a little boy at that point. And then, of course, I think we saw, was it the President Maduro at one point? And I've also seen 3 heads of state of Republic of China, Taiwan. Of course, Republic of China, Taiwan has a very small diplomatic footprint. So in some respects, I'm very honored that we've been able to host 3 heads of state. I think that's perhaps the record that we have in terms of any one country.
And then, of course, President Ali. President
Irfan Ali of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. I also forgot, of course, the first African leader to visit here in St. Lucia, that of Nelson Mandela, back in 1998, July of 1990. I think it's almost to the date today, actually, July the 4th.
And let's not forget, the Rastafarians always remind us that His Excellency Haile Selassie was in Jamaica, not
in Jamaica. I think in '66, the same time that the Queen came to St. Lucia. He came to visit Jamaica. So we certainly don't have very often these types of visits, and so when we do put them on, I think it's certainly an opportunity for us as well to showcase our country, so that allow individuals who are looking on to be able to get a sense of St. Lucia. We've been fortunate that we've been able to have a Julian Alfred, last year, putting St. Lucia on the map in terms of her Olympic success, becoming the world's fastest woman, winning the 100-meter gold in the Paris Olympics back in August 2024, and as well the silver in the 200 meters, and she's doing phenomenally well this year as well. So she, of course, is a wonderful ambassador to St. Lucia currently. But these types of visits are also very important in terms of, honing in on St. Lucia, our culture, our economy, and what we can in fact offer the world.
Speaking of ambassadors, colleagues, the President of Nigeria, when he met with the Nigerian community, encouraged them to continue to be very good ambassadors in St. Lucia. He actually encouraged them to work hard and do not break the law. And that was, quote unquote, he was given a portrait of himself by as a gift from the Nigerian St. Lucia community. And now we are now at the HIA, and we are bringing you the scenes as the aircraft, the first.
It looks like the first aircraft, I believe.
Is already there.
That is the Nigeria Air Force aircraft.
It's amazingly quicker than
the forward aircraft.
At first.
Is it? I'm not sure. We can't quite see. I believe it is the first aircraft. Maybe we can film that in a little while when we can get a little view.
Ça c'est avion Nigeria, Nogawela.
It says Nigeria Air Force.
Ça c'est avion docteur, enfin l'autre c'est mon
ancillary staff. Yes.
Ça c'est président Tinubu. Ça veut dire tout à l'heure l'autre avion qui président Tinubu a suivi qui est arrivé. Mais c'est le premier avion qui quittait l'aéroport George Charles, qui est arrivé en Vieux-Fort avec il a fait rond, tout à l'heure il a taxi pour bailler l'autre avion président Tinubu là pour descendre. Et à l'aise là nous avons cérémonie pour bienvenue encore avant il partir. Nous avons ça tout à l'heure.
We're
Yes,
seeing
of
images
course.
of the aircraft at the UNR International Airport. It's at the southernmost district of St. Lucia, J4. It's named Old Fort because of an old Dutch fort which is believed to have been built back in the 1600s. And you can see that hill in the background, that's the Cape Mola Sheep, the southernmost point in St. Lucia. It is also home to the world's second highest lighthouse. There's a story behind that. It was built back in, I think, 1900, Michael and Claudia. And originally the belief was that it was supposed to have been sent to Cape St. Lucia in South Africa. And unfortunately somehow ended up being shipped to the wrong St. Lucia. And ended up in St. Lucia.
Why do we have that kind of history?
And it
It's the
ended
same
up
thing with
being-
St. Jude, remember?
Yes, there's a similar
And
story
it's
with St.
an African
Lucia.
connection. It
And
ended
it's
up
an
being
interesting African connection
by
as well.
accident, but
Yes,
nonetheless
because-
an African connection too.
Yeah.
Because you have St. Lucia, which is a wildlife reserve as well in South Africa, and the southern tip of South Africa as well, similar to right here, the southern tip of St. Lucia and Cape Mola Sheep. And of course, they are taxiing at the moment to the on the parking apron, and we'll be awaiting the president's flight, so the plane carrying the president to land relatively soon, I imagine, a couple of minutes as well. At this point, hopefully he's enjoying some lovely views of the Pitons and of course enjoying the weather. Of course, a little overcast it seems down at Hiwanora International Airport.
Well, when we witnessed the arrival, there was some inclement weather. Today there's some liquid sunshine, I would say.
A little better.
But it's much
Yes.
better. It's much improved compared to the last time. Of course, they would we already see on ground the guard of honor and the Prime Minister, and the number of officials will be there. And well, they are already there,
Yes,
we should say,
members of the
for
Royal
the
Signature Police
for
Band
the red
are
carpet
already present.
farewell.
For that farewell. And this is, of course, as I mentioned, happening at the Hiwanora International Airport. And it used to be, I think, in fact, Michael, you were alluding to it regarding the St. Jude Hospital being a similar story in terms of how it was built. And at that time, it was during World War II. And that area was, in fact, a U.S. military base. It was called Bean Airfield, and it was meant to protect the Panama Canal. It was one of a ring of air bases, of military bases that the U.S. were establishing in the Caribbean, that Caribbean archipelago, to form an arc of defense against the trade in through that all-important Panama Canal. And so, in fact, this airport is an expansion of an original U.S. Air base, Bean Airfield, which was built back in 1942. And I believe we're seeing some images now of the final approach of the president coming into Hiwanora International Airport. Right now, it's just one runway operating, the runway 1028, and yes, the president is in fact on final approach, coming in from the west, and we're about to see the touchdown of that plane here at Hiwanora International Airport. And of course, awaiting him will be Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip J. Pierre.
Milly, il est arrivé à présent.
Yes.
Ça c'est
This
l'aéroport. Il est arrivé à Vieux-Fort. Il avion en est posé avec tout à l'heure nous avons une cérémonie pour enfin pour l'aider avec c'est là il Ça nous passe là, nous, il est intéressé pour ça, à ce qu'il laisse avion, il a quitté.
Sometimes it's not necessarily disclosed, Michael. Might be, yes, it might be a security measure not to disclose precisely which aircraft the president is on. I mean, he's definitely there, and his was definitely the second flight to take off. And in a heartbeat, Alex, he was already in Beaufort.
Yes, indeed.
What a difference it makes when you go by air. And even as the aircraft is taxiing down the tarmac, I think I should take the opportunity to share with our viewers that Nigeria and St. Lucia have signed a technical manpower assistance agreement, TMA, outlining modalities for deploying skilled Nigerian professionals to St. Lucia. This is part of efforts to deepen South-South cooperation and reconnect with the African diaspora in the Caribbean. And of course, we have some areas in terms of sectors where we need specialists, which has hemorrhaged a bit, and health is one of those areas, and other facets of our development. Generally, you'll find that we have had brain drain, we have had persons leaving for greener pasture, shall we say, and the countries, of course, need to reinforce their manpower in certain areas.
Yes, and I think it's very important for Nigeria right now to maximize its greatest resource, not oil and gas, but that of its people, its burgeoning population. And 1 in 5 persons being born in the world right now is an African. Right? And so Nigeria is leading in that regard. They have a very youthful population, which of course they are trying their very best to skill and train. And I think that is also their strength, that they can now begin to reach out and engage in soft diplomacy, just like the United States was able to do with the Peace Corps that you mentioned earlier on. That opportunity now for Nigeria to make an impact. Cuba has been doing it. Cuba has been helping us tremendously in that regard, thanks to their investments in education and health. And we've been great beneficiaries of that with these Cuban medical missions. But already we know that some of these missions are under threat. You're hearing the suggestions, and so it's certainly important for the Caribbean and for St. Lucia to begin looking at strengthening our health security. And that also means training our own, and we know we've heard some of the pronouncements of the Prime Minister in terms of training more nurses and free tuition for nurses here in St. Lucia this afternoon's community college. But the need for doctors, equally important, and we're seeing Nigerians, and we already have had a tradition, Micah, I don't remember, of having Nigerian doctors right here in St. Lucia and in the Caribbean.
And we've had the Cubans.
Cuba, exactly. And so this offer of this soft diplomacy through technical assistance, through medical assistance, is so very important. Some of the best doctors in the United States of America right now are Nigerians, right? And we're already seeing the impact that is so very important. And I think in that same release that you were reading, Claudia, I think it made mention that Jamaica is asking for 400 professionals already to come from Nigeria. So they're seeing the need, they know their needs and the possibilities, and they are also trying to embrace this visit. So this visit is really important, not just for St. Lucia, not just for the Eastern Caribbean, but really for the entire Caribbean and South-South relations.
Absolutely, and I think after the joint meeting of the Senate and Parliament on Monday, there was a high-level luncheon, but it was a working luncheon and a lot was achieved, and those agreements came out of this working luncheon. We had the heads of the OECS, our Prime Minister, our members of Parliament were present, and they have appeared to...
And the Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Solution-born Dr. Didicus Jules as well.
Was also present with, of course, experts from the OECS. And they were able to fine-tune a lot of the initiatives that we first heard the president mention. So they really seized the moment, I would say.
I met Dr. Jules after the visit, in fact, and he was so impressed at the willingness of Nigeria to engage with the Caribbean. And we can see President, you see an umbrella coming out. Does that mean that there's rain?
Windy.
Very windy.
It's windy. The wind would not allow the umbrella to be unfurled.
Président Tinubu qui descend avion tout à l'heure, mais qu'on nous dit l'année en vieux fort, la pluie avec vent bien fort. Alors, n'importe moment, nous avons le président Tinubu qui a sorti pour le Premier ministre avec leur délégation en bas, Lucia, avec une petite cérémonie, avec ces policiers, ces bailonnés tout à l'heure. C'est ça nous avons à cette télévision-là, présent, nous avons président, nous regardons bien, nous avons président Yonde, ces officiers-là, avec ces membres de délégation qui descendent, mais nous pouvons voir la parole président Tinubu. N'importe quel moment, comme on dit, la livraison d'ici, comme on dit, c'est l'aéroport de George. Souvent, on a fait moins bien, mais ça qui a fait un vieux fort là, c'est nous avons espéré le président Tinubu, là, il a descendu, avec tout à l'heure, il a parlé dehors, avec nous avons commencé la cérémonie avant de quitter le pays, c'est
place where I always knew I belong. Open your heart and you'll find me in a paradise. Feel so blessed to go home. She's just so magical and cynic. She's so bountiful and pure. A light that illuminates your spirit. A gem you can't ignore. Watch the sunrise of your Twin Peaks. Watch the sunset at your shores. If the oceans could tell stories, then the waves would sing your song. Wake up with a smile cause I'm just so happy. Happy for the life that your light embodies. Say there's no place like home. We can catch a vibe over hills and valleys. Kick a selfish with a figure dashing. Down by the river where the kids clothes washing. Say there's no place like home.
Welcome back to our live broadcast here at the George F. Charles Airport. With me, colleagues George Jr. and our prayer expert Michael Gaspar Claudia Monlouis. Of course, we were bringing you the scenes from the HIA, and as we could see, there was a turn in the weather, and it was confirmed by our team on the ground that the rains are pretty heavy at this point, and so we had to pause for a bit until we received further guidance as to what the decision would be with the proceedings. I would well imagine, colleagues, that the protocol team would have to turn to a plan B at this point in time.
Yes, I'm not too sure what the plan B is, but certainly we're going to wait to see what happens down at Iwanor International Airport in that regard. Of course, as we are continuing to say farewell to His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the 16th President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And of course, he has been here in St. Lucia since the 29th of June and has been enjoying some very warm hospitality. And Claudia, earlier on you were talking about some of the highlights with respect to the visit, and one of them I thought was the warmth of the Nigerian delegation. They were very open, they were very keen to share. I was making the point, I think, earlier on in speaking with Director General of the OECS, Dr. Lucas Jules. He said, you know, during that meeting with the high-level delegation between Nigeria and the OECS heads, how quick and willing the president was keen to act and to make sure that things were happening. I mean, they put together a joint committee in a matter of minutes and were ready to act. And it shows that Nigeria is very serious about its diplomatic relations and diplomacy. The president has set out as part of his agenda an expanding Nigeria. I think we see Africa, 54 countries, but there are differences, of course, and there are differences in capacity as to what some of these countries can achieve. Nigeria is certainly an emerging power, like Egypt, like South Africa, maybe Algeria to a certain extent, and they have some capacities that some of the other African countries don't have as yet. And one of them is in their diplomatic strength. I think they have over 100 embassies or high commissions around the world, and there are an equally large number of other embassies in Abuja, showing that there's a very keen willingness of the world to be able to seek out diplomatic relationships with Nigeria. So they are trying to expand their own regional and international connections with Africa and with the rest of the world. And of course, us here as the 6th region of Africa, they are certainly very keen to be able to realize in very quick time some of the benefits that can accrue to our people, our countries. And I think the cultural cooperation, the promise of scholarships, already we're being told that by the next academic year we should be already having St. Lucians given the opportunity to actually study in Nigeria. We're seeing the quickness in terms of the technical assistance being on offer. And I honestly think that this is just the beginning with respect to that. We've already seen, as I said, Afrexim Bank and what they are actually doing in terms of providing finance for the Caribbean, their commitment of setting up in Barbados a regional headquarters. That's no small money, you know, Claudia and Michael.
Yes.
I think $180 million investment in the Caribbean, hotel, conference center, incubator. You know, it's a really impressive level of investment. And I'm certain too that if we are serious about it here in St. Lucia, we certainly also should be able to ensure that we can see investment coming from Nigeria as well, because they're also keen to develop their tourism industry. You know, they have a very small nascent tourism
industry.
We depend on tourism, of course, tremendously.
Yes.
And so we can offer that type of expertise in terms of how you market, how you brand, how you share. I mean, they've got a lot of experience, no doubt about that too.
Yeah,
but then in terms
definitely.
of tourism, we have something to offer
Yes.
in terms of Nigeria.
Indeed, it's going to be a fair exchange, I think. And of course, as you indicated, colleagues, the President Tinubu, of course, not one for empty words or empty promises. And so you find that he is ready to rule. And I am sure we will meet him where we can with the same energy. Not only St. Lucia is benefiting, as you indicated, Jamaica.
Right.
Come July 9th, we have Grenada, who will receive a number of professional volunteers.
Yes.
And
doctors, I think, 4 doctors, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Grenada, and I think the other OECS countries walked away from the meeting, Michael, with the president, with their own bag of goodies as well in terms of bilateral cooperation.
Oui, moi d'accord. Je voulais dire, quand nous devions ici, qui raison nous pas présents, nous l'année la pluie. La pluie, ça a empêché l'activité à continuer. Nous là, qu'à espérer peut-être la pluie à chercher teasing avant nous devions exactement qui manière qu'à passer en vieux fort. Comme on dit, nous là, qu'à espérer pour manière qu'à passer. Mais en même temps, visite président Tinubu en Saint-Lucie, je dit ça avant, c'est un qui est significant en plus. Mais il est aussi intéressant que ce n'est pas seulement Saint-Lucie, c'est OICS là. Les présidents Tinubu parlaient et puis ça c'est un joint meeting. Et puis Parlement Saint-Lucie, il fait l'adresse avec souvent il a fait Saint-Lucie, mais tous les autres, ces chefs pays OICS là étaient présents. So, ça il a dit non, c'est que visite ça là, c'est pas seulement pour Saint-Lucie, mais c'est les autres ces pays, régions OICS là, qui jouent un bénéfice qu'on lui, donc il y a des goodies. Yo même qui a sorti et puis différents pays, Saint-Vincent, la Grenade, Dominique, Antigua, Saint Kitts, Montserrat, tous ces pays là, ils étaient présents avec yo qui jouent bénéfice. Mais c'est en dit, c'est en Saint-Lucie et mais ils étaient là. Et un autre bail encore qui est important, c'est Dr. Didicus Jules, ça c'est commission OICS là, c'est bureau OICS là qui établit en Saint-Lucie. C'était en gros force en visite ça. Yo travaille à Champil pour faire visite ça la travail et quand moi pas Saint-Lucie seulement mais toute région OICS là avec peut-être Caraïbes là qui a un bénéfice par visite ça.
And I think we also already have a body of people who have had relationships working in diplomatic circles in Africa. I think, for example, of Mrs. Nancy Nicholas, who's, I think, right now working in the Ministry of External Affairs. She, in fact, did her master's in diplomatic relations in Ghana. And so there is also Mr. Armstrong Alexis, another St. Lucian, who is currently the Deputy Director General of CARICOM, the Caribbean Community down in Guyana. And he's worked in Africa on different levels, in Namibia. I think he's also worked in Nigeria, in Maiduguri, way up in the northeastern part of Nigeria. So definitely we have some people who can guide and advise and assist in this process of trying to strengthen those diplomatic relations with respect to Nigeria and, of course, West Africa on a whole. I know we have a bit of noise. Can we continue? Is that okay?
Okay, yeah. Les derniers des ordres à présent, matin pour attendre, chaque des ordres par avion, comment nous ici à l'aéroport, pour aller à Tsab, depuis à l'aéroport, il y a chaque des ordres avec nos gars espérés, tout à l'heure, nous dévier à l'aéroport,
in a paradise, we're so blessed to go home. She's just so magical and cynic. She's so bountiful and pure. A light that illuminates your spirit. A gem you can't ignore. Watch the sunrise up your Twin Peaks. Watch the sunset at your shores. If the oceans could tell stories, then the waves would sing your song. Sing cause I'm just so happy for the life that your light embodies. Say there's no place like home. We can catch a vibe over hills and valleys. Cook a selfish with a figure dashing. Down by the river where the kids clothes washing. Say there's no place like home. The sun could set me free. Your love is all I need. Only one journey. Our future is so bright. Open your arms. Hold me closely to your heart. It's where I wanna be. Right here in unity. Sing.
Beauty is not loud or overbearing, but simply striking, exquisite, and luminary from within. Though her soils have been trodden over 14 times, they are no less fertile. They remain enriched with the seeds of multicultural roots.
In a place where I always knew I belong. Open your heart and you'll find me. In a paradise we're so blessed to go home. She's just so magical and cynic. She's so bountiful and pure. A light that illuminates your spirit. A gem you can't ignore. Watch the sunrise up your Twin Peaks. Watch the sunset at your shores. If the oceans could tell stories, then the waves would sing your song. Sing. Wake up with a smile cause I'm just so happy. Happy for the life that your light embodies. Say there's no place like home. We can catch a vibe over hills and valleys. Keep us selfish with a figure dashing. Down by the river where the kids' clothes washing. Say there's no place like home. The sun could set me free. Your love is all I need. Only one journey. Our future is so bright. Open your arms. Hold me closely to your heart. It's where I wanna be. Right here in unity. Sing Lucia.
From a land where beauty is not loud or overbearing, but simply striking, exquisite, and luminary from within. Though her soils have been trodden over 14 times, they are no less fertile. They remain enriched through the seeds of multicultural roots.
He's got a hold of that one as well. And it's hit.
You'll find me.
Proud of it, proud of it.
Brilliant from Johnson Charles.
Proud of it, proud of it.
You'll find me. With all the wonders in the world, St. Lucia's only man. 46 years independence, all her excellence we sing. We pledge to some. I know every St. Lucian.
Proud of it, proud of it. Proud of it, proud of it.
It's a health and the well-being of a prosperous nation. We standing patriotic, representing this island. We pledge to some. I know every solution. So I could go up forever day to feel all the vibes and break away. Independence 46, no need to sell it, West and say. To my land of birth, to the place I love.
I am a proud St. Lucian, and it's always an honor representing St. Lucian on the global stage, no matter where I go. And I will never switch my allegiance ever. I just wanted to let you know.
Believe in yourself. Anything's possible. If I could do it, you can do it, and don't stop. You know, be patient and don't stop.
I am a down proud Lucian. No calling to move us on. I am a down proud Lucian, proud St. Lucian. And I will raise the flag till I die. I am a down proud Lucian. No calling to move us on.
So I urge you to be proud of your achievements by all means, but don't ever believe that those achievements.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we indicated earlier, there was the complication of heavy rains and strong winds at the UNR International Airport down in Beaufort. A bit inclement there at the George F. Charles Airport, but not as bad as HIA, and this has interrupted the proceedings, and the proceedings are now on pause until such time that I guess everything is reviewed And so at this point, I would like to again thank you for joining us on this live broadcast from all over the world, St. Lucia, the OACS region, the Caribbean, the Nigerian and St. Lucian diaspora, Nigerians in Lagos. We received some greetings from Lagos. Hello, Lagos. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. Michael?
Oui, merci. Vous faites moi oui. Hello Lagos. Mais nous bien contents que Jean Lagos, ça c'est en Nigeria même, pas seulement en Nigeria, peut-être tout partout en Afrique, côté qui est Saint-Lucien, qui a resté dehors Saint-Lucie, qui a gardé nous ici. Et qui a fait nous la peine qui nous n'y pour faire, mais à présent, faire ça c'est programme ça là, puisque l'année la pluie en vieux fort pour les moments. Et puis, il n'y a pas qu'à marcher comme nous t'avons espéré, mais nous sommes bien contents que nous avons exactement tout ça qui est passé en Sainte-Lucie par visite au président Ahmed, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Bonne visite tout bonnement en Sainte-Lucie. Moi, plusieurs personnes, je dit tout le monde, moi, je crois que plus, on a plus de monde satisfait et puis manière de la passer, c'est les gens qui organisent les ministres des Affaires étrangères, gouvernement Sainte-Lucie, cabinet, tous ces gens qui sont engagés. J'ai Jean GIS qui travaille aussi pour mener Baou en tout partout en la terre. Nous sommes bien contents pour manière y passer. Engagement, ça là, c'est bon. Visite là, c'est bon. Avec nous sommes bien contents qui ont participé ou essayer de regarder qui manière y est. Avec un finissement, nous avons quoi? Ou qui a regardé le programme, nous avons pris grosse appréciation pour le pays Nigeria, puisque Nigeria c'est un pays Afrique, même quand nous avons chaque monde qui est resté là, 223 millions de monde, un pile de monde tout bonnement, avec un monde qui n'a même langage, même pas langage exactement, mais même qu'il est presque, et puis nous, avec un chaque bagaille, nous sommes séparés, et puis alors, quand le président Tinubu dit nous, il a fait nous un chaque bagaille, scholarship, il a fait nous un échange culturel, il a fait nous un peut-être voyage direct pour aller en Afrique, pour vendre marchandises, tout bagaille comme ça, qui nous travaille en faveur Sainte-Lucie, et puis région Kawaii Blanc, nous avons merci un peu, et puis nous sommes bien contents ensemble, et puis Claudia, et puis Calix, pour mener ça qui passe là.
Definitely not the end, but the start of good things to come beginning in the near future, as we said, colleagues. And before we bring the curtains down and we take your closing comments, colleagues, I must acknowledge the hardworking team of the Government Information Service, also the Director of Information Services, Mrs. Vinette Sentoma Fontinel, and the Principal Information Officer, Geraldine Bisset Joseph, who have worked so hard and even on the ball with us, ensuring that we bring you the best quality and standard of broadcast that we can, considering the challenges of trying to do so at an active airport and the Mother Nature, of course, intervening and making her presence felt with the showers of blessings in the south.
The rain can't spoil our parade at this point. I think we are overjoyed at this moment, at the past week, at realizing history coming to the fore, this remarkable milestone between our two countries and our two nations. And definitely I want to echo your sentiments, Claudia, that, really people being able to come together is a really, really great opportunity. I'm being told that we may not be able to speak for very much longer because we actually have this plane that's going to be leaving very soon, but it certainly has been a wonderful experience, I think, for all of us.
Bye for now.